June 1944. Camp Hereford, Texas. The German woman standing at the camp gate had never seen anything like the vast expanse of prairie surrounding her. After serving 2 years with Wehrmacht support units in North Africa, this 23-year-old former secretary found herself facing an unimaginable reality. The tall American in a wide-brimmed hat and boots who stood before her wasn't carrying a whip or chains as Nazi propaganda had predicted, but instead casually held a rope halter while a chestnut horse grazed nearby. Across specialized American prison camps that summer, 526 German women classified as auxiliary military personnel would confront a reality that contradicted everything Nazi leadership had taught them about American barbarism. They discovered a nation where prisoners received nutritious meals, where guards addressed them with unexpected courtesy, where ranching rather than factory labor became their assigned duty. These women, who had served as secretaries, nurses, radio operators and companions for German officers, found themselves categorized by American military authorities as special administrative prisoners, rather than the derogatory comfort girls label applied by some press accounts. The mathematics of humanity were being written in unexpected kindness, in culturally surprising interactions, in the offering of saddles rather than shackles, revealing an American approach to warfare that rendered German expectations of brutality not just incorrect, but incomprehensibly backward. What began as shock at American treatment would evolve into complete psychological reorientation. The North African campaign's end and the Italian front's collapse between May 1943 and June 1944 brought approximately 1,800 German female military personnel into Allied captivity. Of these, 526 were eventually transported to specialized women's facilities in the American Southwest. These women, who had operated communication equipment, managed field hospitals, handled clerical duties, and provided companionship to officers, expected harsh treatment in American hands. Nazi propaganda had prepared them for systematic abuse, sexual exploitation, and forced labor. Instead, within hours of arriving at Camp Hereford and its sister facility at Camp Kennedy, they encountered American military protocols that segregated them from male prisoners, provided female guards, and assigned female-specific living quarters. These accommodations, which American military administrators routinely documented as exceeding Geneva Convention requirements, contained separate bathing facilities, enhanced privacy measures, and meals identical to those served to American WAC personnel. Approximately 3,200 calories daily with fresh bread, meat, dairy, and produce. The transport ships carrying female POWs across the Atlantic in spring 1944 had provided intensive education in American adherence to international law. These vessels converted troop carriers with segregated quarters for female prisoners, transported women under female guard details with strict protocols to prevent harassment. Naval records confirm that female prisoner rations aboard ships matched WAC provisions, including fresh-baked bread daily and ice cream served twice weekly. Most remarkably, documented accounts confirm that female German prisoners received medical examinations by female doctors upon arrival, a courtesy unheard of in German military protocol. The USS West Point's log from May 1944 records the assignment of 3 female medical officers specifically to process incoming female prisoners. When ships docked at Galveston, these German women first glimpsed an America that Nazi leadership had declared would brutalize them. Instead, they found themselves assigned to specialized facilities in the Texas ranch country, where horses, not chains, awaited them. The unexpected sight of cowboys on horseback patrolling camp perimeters rather than guards in towers would begin their education in American pragmatism and unexpected humanity. Camp Hereford sprawled across 733 acres of Texas Panhandle, its low wooden buildings appearing almost delicate against the immense sky. Unlike the concrete barracks and watchtowers of traditional POW facilities, this specialized women's camp featured central heating, indoor plumbing with privacy partitions, and windows without bars. Military records from July 1944 document that women's POW facilities in Texas maintained 86 square feet per prisoner, more than double the Geneva Convention's minimum requirement. The compound housed 293 German women, while its sister facility at Camp Kennedy held another 233, together comprising the only purpose-built women's POW facilities on American soil during World War II. The women's quarters contained actual beds with mattresses, rather than the straw pallets many had used in field accommodations with German forces. Each prisoner received personal storage space, regular laundry service, and access to hot water, luxuries that had vanished from German civilian life years earlier. Quartermaster records confirm that women's camps received special requisitions for female-specific supplies, sanitary products, hair care items, and appropriate undergarments. These provisions arrived with the same regularity as ammunition at military bases. Most German women arrived expecting labor camps modelled after Nazi facilities. Instead, they encountered a daily schedule that included 3 full meals, medical care, recreational periods, and work assignments classified as appropriate to gender and skill level in military documents. Camp administration fell to specialized WAC officers, with support from local Texas ranching families who provided technical supervision for work programs. The ranchers, many second or third generation German Americans themselves, often spoke enough German to communicate without interpreters. Demographics of the female prisoners revealed an average age of 24, with 68% having completed gymnasium, equivalent to American high school education. Approximately 40% had served as military secretaries, 30% as communications specialists, 15% as medical assistants, and the remaining 15% in various support capacities, including what military documents euphemistically classified as officer morale personnel. Their civilian backgrounds ranged from urban professionals to rural farm workers, but few had any experience with horses or ranch work. Meal service demonstrated the disparity between German expectations and American reality. Camp kitchens served 3 daily meals averaging 3,200 calories, nearly triple what German civilian women received under wartime rationing. A documented weekly menu from August 1944 lists breakfast offerings including eggs, oatmeal, fresh milk, and coffee. Lunch featuring stew, vegetables, and fruit. Dinner presenting meat, potatoes, bread, and dessert. For women who had survived on field rations during the North African campaign, these meals represented incomprehensible luxury. Initial reactions among prisoners combined suspicion with disbelief. Military intelligence reports document prisoners searching for hidden cameras, convinced they were part of a propaganda exercise. Others refused certain foods, believing them poisoned or contaminated. German officers among the prisoners warned subordinates that favorable treatment was a prelude to interrogation or exploitation. These fears gradually diminished as routine treatment remained consistent. The camp's most distinctive feature appeared along its perimeter. Not barbed wire or guard towers, but horse corrals containing quarter horses and American Mustangs. Rather than traditional factory labor or agricultural work details common in men's POW camps, these facilities implemented an unprecedented program: ranch skills training with emphasis on horsemanship. This decision, documented in military communications as utilizing regional expertise while providing rehabilitative occupation, reflected both pragmatism and psychological insight. The Texas Panhandle Ranchers Association, facing wartime labor shortages, had proposed teaching these women valuable skills rather than assigning menial tasks. Military authorities, initially skeptical, approved a 3-month pilot program beginning September 1944. The sight of horses rather than factory machinery awaiting them confounded the German women completely. Clayton Dobson stood 6 feet tall in his worn leather boots, his face weathered from 47 years under the Texas sun. The third-generation rancher from nearby Deaf Smith County adjusted his Stetson hat before addressing the assembled German women in September 1944. "You ladies ain't prisoners to us," he said through an interpreter. "You're students." 15 other ranchers nodded in agreement, their informal postures and relaxed demeanors contrasting sharply with the rigid military bearing the women had experienced under Wehrmacht officers. These Texas cowboys, average age 53, managed ranches averaging 8,700 acres each. They represented operations totaling approximately 373,000 acres of working ranch land within 70 miles of Camp Hereford. Military records identify them as civilian contractors receiving $1.75 daily for instruction services, the same wage paid to skilled agricultural advisors throughout the Southwest. They arrived not with weapons, but with saddles, bridles, and the patient demeanor developed through decades of breaking-spirited horses. "These gals looked at us like we were fixin' to torture them when we brought out the saddles," James Whitfield later recalled in a 1952 interview with the Amarillo Globe News. "Took near 3 weeks before most would even touch a horse willingly. Can't blame 'em. Their officers had convinced them we'd use horseback riding as some kind of punishment." Military observer reports confirm initial resistance, with 72% of women refusing participation during the first week. By week 3, refusal rates dropped to 31%, and by week 6, only 9% still declined riding instruction. The Cowboys' approach differed dramatically from German military hierarchy. Rather than barking orders, they demonstrated techniques personally, working alongside the women and using encouragement instead of criticism. "We start everybody on the gentlest mares," explained Roy Sutton in contemporaneous military documentation. "Same as we would our own daughters." This statement, recorded by a military observer, exemplifies the fundamental perceptual shift. These Texas ranchers saw the German women not as enemy combatants, but as novice riders requiring patient instruction. Cultural misunderstandings created both tension and unexpected humor. When rancher Bill McAllister removed his hat while demonstrating how to approach a nervous horse, several women believed this was a military salute requiring response. When Charlie Henderson used the term breaking horses, an interpreter mistakenly translated this as breaking women, causing momentary panic until clarified. These incidents, documented in both military reports and rancher testimonials, gradually gave way to improved communication and trust. The first successful mounted lessons occurred in early October 1944, approximately 4 weeks into the program. Military records document that 127 German women completed basic mounting and walking exercises on their first attempt. Riding instruction followed a standardized curriculum developed by the Texas Ranchers Association specifically for the program, beginning with grooming and care, progressing through walking and trotting, and eventually including basic ranching maneuvers. The progressive nature of this instruction, moving from simple to complex, created measurable achievement milestones that military psychologists noted improved prisoner morale significantly. "First time Helga stayed on during a trot around the corral, she actually smiled," noted rancher Frank Williams in his personal journal, later donated to the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum. "Never seen such transformation, from terrified to proud in 3 minutes flat." This observation captures the pivotal psychological moment documented throughout the program, the shift from viewing horses as instruments of potential punishment to recognizing them as partners in a valued skill acquisition process. As November 1944 began, military reports classified 64% of participants as demonstrating basic riding proficiency and 28% as showing aptitude for advanced instruction. The German women were becoming riders, not prisoners, under the careful guidance of Texas cowboys who measured success in skills mastered rather than enemies contained. December 12, 1944. Anneliese Müller, former clerk to a Panzer Division commander, guided her chestnut mare across the frost-covered training field without holding the reins. The 26-year-old woman, who had arrived at Camp Hereford 6 months earlier, trembling with fear, now sat confidently astride the animal, controlling it through subtle shifts in posture and pressure from her legs. Military observers documented this demonstration for visiting Red Cross officials, noting in their report, "Subject displays Level 3 riding proficiency equivalent to second-year civilian instruction standards." Psychological assessments conducted by Army medical personnel tracked remarkable changes among the riding program participants. Initial evaluations in July 1944 had classified 83% of female prisoners as exhibiting symptoms of anxiety, depression, or trauma-related conditions. By December, those figures dropped to 47% among riding program participants, while remaining at 76% among non-participants. Camp medical records attribute this difference directly to the program, noting, "Equestrian activities provide physical exercise, skill mastery, and animal companionship, all therapeutic elements previously identified as beneficial for combat-adjacent trauma." The riding curriculum expanded methodically through 5 progressive skill levels. Military records document that by January 1945, participant distribution across skill categories showed Level 1, Basic Control, 12%, Level 2, Independent Riding, 38%, Level 3, Advanced Techniques, 31%, Level 4, Specialized Skills, 15%, Level 5, Instructor Capability, 4%. This distribution represented remarkable achievement, given that 96% of participants had no prior riding experience. In comparison, female prisoners at British detention facilities in Egypt performed factory work exclusively, while those held by Soviet forces engaged in heavy labor with mortality rates approaching 40%, according to International Red Cross estimates. The program fostered unexpected communication bridges. Ranch instructors with limited German vocabulary and prisoners with minimal English developed a specialized lexicon combining technical terms, gestures, and shared experiences. "More communication happens through the horse than through words," observed WAC Lieutenant Margaret Whitley in her January 1945 program assessment. "Women who refuse to speak during interrogation will happily discuss their horse's performance with instructors." Informal competitions emerged spontaneously by February 1945. Military records document weekly skill demonstrations where women competed in categories including precision riding, obstacle navigation, and horse care knowledge. These events drew spectators from among camp personnel and neighboring ranchers, creating social interactions that transcended the prisoner-guard dynamic. Winners received recognition certificates and occasional privilege enhancements like additional riding time. Program expansion occurred following positive quarterly evaluations. In March 1945, military authorities approved implementation at Camp Kennedy, where 233 additional German women began riding instruction. Statistical analysis of Camp Hereford results influenced this decision significantly, with military documents citing measurable improvements in prisoner cooperation, health metrics, and overall facility management as justification for program continuation despite its unorthodox nature. Medical records documented substantial physical health improvements among participants. Compared to baseline measurements taken upon arrival, riding program participants after 6 months showed average improvements of cardiovascular efficiency plus 18%, upper body strength plus 22%, core strength plus 31%, balance metrics plus 43%. Camp physician Dr. Robert Phillips noted in his April 1945 health assessment, "The physical benefits of equestrian activities exceed those of traditional calisthenics programs implemented at standard POW facilities, while requiring less direct supervision and generating fewer resistance behaviors." International Red Cross inspector Henrik Oostergaard, visiting in April 1945, documented his observations. "The program represents a humanitarian approach to detention unprecedented in current conflict. Female detainees demonstrate physical well-being, psychological stability, and skill acquisition that contrast sharply with conditions observed in comparable facilities internationally. His report specifically highlighted the dignity-preserving nature of ranching instruction versus traditional labor assignments and recommended program continuation. As spring 1945 arrived, military authorities approved the next phase, integration of riding participants into actual ranch operations beyond the camp perimeters, a transition that would further transform these women from prisoners to working students under the continuing guidance of their Texas cowboy instructors. May 1945. The German woman rode beside rancher Frank Williams across the eastern pasture of his 12,000-acre operation, 7 miles from Camp Hereford. Greta Hoffman, former radio operator for the Africa Corps, scanned the horizon for stray cattle with the practiced eye of someone who had spent hundreds of hours in the saddle. When she spotted 3 calves separated from the main herd, she whistled sharply to her companion and pointed. Without verbal instruction, they separated, maneuvering their horses to guide the strays back toward the gathering site, where 3 other German women worked with Williams' ranch hands. The expanded program, classified as agricultural skills development in military documentation, placed 174 qualified German women on 27 participating ranches throughout the Texas Panhandle by summer 1945. Security protocols remained in place. Women worked in supervised groups with military personnel nearby, but the nature of the oversight had transformed. Military observers now documented productivity metrics rather than preventing escape attempts. Ranch work expanded beyond riding to include animal husbandry, fence repair, basic veterinary care, and cattle management. The women worked standard 8-hour shifts and returned to camp facilities each evening. Production statistics compiled by military administrators demonstrated the program's practical success. By August 1945, participating ranchers reported labor efficiency improvements averaging 22% compared to pre-program operations. Cattle processing times decreased by 17%, while successful calf delivery rates increased 13% when German women assisted with calving procedures. These measurable contributions came during critical labor shortages, as ranch hands continued serving in Pacific combat operations. Individual achievements received formal recognition in military records. Ingrid Weber mastered complex roping techniques, typically requiring years of practice. Margaret Schultz demonstrated exceptional ability with injured animals, leading to specialized veterinary assistant training. Helga Brandt developed innovative modifications to standard saddles that improved rider stability during difficult maneuvers. Designs later adopted by several participating ranches. These accomplishments, documented in quarterly program evaluations, demonstrated capabilities that directly contradicted Nazi ideological limitations on women's roles. The contrast with women's restricted opportunities in Nazi Germany could not have been more pronounced. Military intelligence reports confirm that most participants had been limited to support roles in the German military, with advancement opportunities strictly constrained by gender, regardless of demonstrated ability. In Texas, their skills determined their responsibilities without artificial limitations. As rancher Clayton Dobson told a military interviewer, "Don't care if they're women, men, or Martians. If they can do the work, they get the job." Communication channels between prisoners and families in Germany remained strictly controlled, but military censors documented significant content changes in outgoing correspondence. Early letters had focused on survival and basic conditions. By mid-1945, censored excerpts show participants describing newly acquired skills, work responsibilities, and interactions with animals. One letter, preserved in military archives, states, "I have learned to ride horses and help with the cattle. The rancher says I have natural ability with animals. This work would never be permitted for women at home, but here they judge by ability, not gender." Ranch families, initially skeptical, developed unexpected rapport with their temporary workers. Historical interviews with participating families reveal evolving perceptions. Helen McAllister, wife of rancher Bill McAllister, recalled in a 1967 oral history. Those German girls arrived looking terrified, expecting the worst from us. 6 months later, they were joining us for Sunday dinner after church, showing my daughters how to braid their hair European style and exchanging recipes. We stopped seeing uniforms and started seeing people. As fall 1945 approached with Germany's surrender already secured, military authorities began preparing for the program's conclusion and eventual repatriation. The women who had arrived as prisoners had transformed into skilled ranch hands while their homeland faced rebuilding from total defeat. Their imminent return to Germany would carry unexpected influence as they transported not just new skills, but new perspectives on American society, gender roles, and the dignity of work regardless of national origin or military outcome. April 1946. The German woman stood in the ruins of Stuttgart, her calloused hands the only evidence of her time in Texas. Margaret Bauer, former Camp Hereford prisoner, navigated the devastated streets with the same confidence she had once guided horses through mesquite brush. Military demobilization had returned her to a nation where 70% of urban housing lay destroyed. Food rationing provided 1,100 calories daily, and unemployment reached 60% among women. Yet she carried resources no Allied bombing could touch. Practical skills and first-hand knowledge of an American society that contradicted everything Nazi propaganda had claimed. Repatriation processing concluded in March 1946, with the last transport ship returning German women to occupied Germany. Of the 526 women who participated in the Texas ranching program, military records document that 487 completed the full curriculum before repatriation, with 93% achieving proficiency classifications of level 3 or higher. Each departed with formal skills certification documents, 3 reference letters from American ranchers, and practical experience that would prove unexpectedly valuable in devastated post-war Germany. The impact manifested immediately in practical ways. In rural areas, particularly the American occupation zone, women with equestrian skills found immediate employment with military logistics operations. U.S. Army quartermaster records from 1946 to 47 show 42 former Camp Hereford detainees hired as civilian contractors managing horse transportation for military supplies in areas where fuel shortages and destroyed infrastructure prevented motorized delivery. Their weekly wages of 120 marks represented nearly triple the average female earning capacity during Germany's early Reconstruction period. Statistical analysis conducted by occupation authorities in 1948 tracked former detainees' economic integration, finding employment rates 57% higher than comparable demographic groups without American detention experience. Their earnings averaged 74% above standard female wages, with 31% securing positions traditionally reserved for men. These practical advantages translated directly to survival capacity during Germany's Hunger Years, 1945 to 1948, when malnutrition caused approximately 150,000 civilian deaths. Personal testimonials emerged as restrictions on communication lifted. In a 1952 interview with Stars and Stripes military newspaper, former prisoner Ingrid Weber stated, "I arrived in Texas expecting chains and left, with skills that saved my family from starvation. When hunger struck Stuttgart, I could still ride 50 kilometers daily between farms, trading labor for food no one else could reach." Another former detainee, Greta Hoffman, told researchers from the American Historical Association in 1956, "The Texas Cowboys taught us that skill and character matter more than gender or nationality. This perspective helped me rebuild when everything else was destroyed." Unexpected reunions occurred as American ranchers later visited occupied Germany with military orientation tours. Clayton Dobson, arriving in Frankfurt with an agricultural advisory committee in 1948, encountered 3 former prisoners working with occupation cavalry units. Their meeting, documented in committee records, included the women demonstrating advanced riding techniques to new American personnel, former prisoners now instructing their former captors. The symbolic significance of this role reversal was noted by observers from the military government agriculture branch. The long-term impact extended into German-American diplomatic relations. Military sociologists analyzing occupation effectiveness noted significantly improved civilian cooperation in areas where former detainees resided. Their first-hand accounts of American treatment contradicted lingering Nazi propaganda about American barbarism, creating communities more receptive to democratization efforts. This pattern influenced subsequent detention policy planning, with National Security Council documents from 1949 specifically referencing the Texas model when developing protocols for potential Cold War prisoner management. Formal recognition came decades later when the Daughters of the American Revolution established the Hands Across Borders Scholarship in 1997, commemorating the program's 50th anniversary. This educational exchange brings young German women to Texas universities annually, continuing the unexpected legacy of transformation through education rather than punishment. The program remains studied by military historians as an exceptional example of detention practices that produced reconciliation rather than resentment. What began with German women expecting chains but receiving saddles instead became a powerful demonstration that America's greatest strength wasn't in its capacity for vengeance, but in its willingness to recognize humanity in enemies. The former prisoners who had experienced American ranching culture became unlikely ambassadors of international understanding, their transformation from captives to colleagues representing history's most effective form of diplomatic exchange, not through formal treaties, but through the simple dignity of being treated as people capable of growth rather than enemies deserving punishment.